Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this video. It's going to be a quick video because we've done lots and lots of descriptive writing practice. This is not like one of the early videos I did around descriptive writing where it would be very heavily scaffolded and there'd be loads and loads of guidance. No, at this stage, we need to be fading those scaffolds and encouraging much more independence. What this video is designed to give you, though, is a set of ideas that you can draw from to be able to produce something more interesting than just your typical description of a wintry scene, which might feel rather static and then perhaps not very engaging. So, okay, just some quick reminders of golden rules. Remember, we're writing in third person, we're maintaining the past tense, and we want to avoid fragments. Fragments where we are writing in minor sentences, incomplete sentences, grammatically incomplete sentences, and we don't mean to do it. One word sentences where it's clearly intentional, no problem, that's great. We want to make sure we're in control of it though. So it's those unintentional fragments we need to be eliminating. So third person, past tense, no fragments unless we're writing one word sentences, and we know exactly why we're doing that. Okay, reminder. We are butterflies, not grasshoppers. Of course, that is a metaphor. We aren't, and the structure and the work that we've done over this year so far around descriptive writing is designed to essentially prevent us turning into grasshoppers in our descriptive writing. What we don't want to do, though, is to hop around rapidly from location to location within our description, from object to object, perhaps in our description, without lingering, without exploring that descriptive moment of possibility in great depth. So we need to stay with a small number of locations and objects and places and events rather than rapidly hopping through 7, 8, 10, 15 different things, because that list-like structure rapidly becomes very, very boring and unengaging. And we don't want that for our descriptions. We want our reader to be kind of drawn into a world, a descriptive world that we're creating through language. And we can't do that if we're rapidly hopping from one thing to another. So butterfly, not grasshopper. Just a reminder about that, very important. Okay, so we're generating ideas. You've got a wintry scene. This is actually very, very similar to a wintry scene that we did for homework quite some time ago. So I'm going to reuse bits of that video as well as some new material as well and some new ideas because there's no reason where I've kind of described something like this already, a wintry scene. The only difference, of course, is that in the new image, there's two figures in the center, but we can always add and take things out of the descriptive stimulus image anyway. So it's not like we need to stick rigidly to that. So just go through the standard 4 steps. What can we see in the image? What ideas and feelings do we associate with what we can see? How are we going to then start taking those ideas and those feelings and structuring and ordering and sequencing them into a plan? And also, what sort of tone do we wish to adopt? Because that will have an impact on the vocabulary choices, for example, that we make. So, a reminder to build a fire, great short story, well worth reading. We can use that as our creative stimulus and use this to create a similar sort of snowy survival type description. There's no reason why we can't do that. I'll share the details of this again on Google Classroom so that you can see all of that. And if you've not watched the animated version on YouTube, it's well worth your time. It's excellent. But I also want to give you some other ideas as well, because we've already covered this before. That's one possibility. Okay, so let's just go through that idea generation set of processes. So we've got the image there. That is the actual image on or in your curriculum booklet. I'm going to make my head slightly smaller. There we go. We can see that a little bit better. So, okay, what can we see? We can see a snow-covered forest. We can see it kind of like stretching out into the distance. We've got very tall, we also have obviously bare trees. They're coated in snow and in frost. That narrow path in the center of the image cutting through the snow. And then two distant figures that we can see just right down at the bottom of the image, moving presumably quietly forward. The light is pale and it's filtering through the branches. It's not like we're in the middle of, bright sunshine. Okay, so I'm looking at that image and I'm thinking about different associations. So we move beyond what we can see to what we feel when we look at that. So I have this sort of feeling of silence, this feeling of real like hushed quiet, maybe even total silence, almost kind of like suspended, a sort of moment of pause. The beauty here is peaceful. It is a very beautiful scene, but there's something really fragile about it as well. And I'll give you some ideas around that sense of fragility. Vast forest, dense, watchful. Potentially, we can look at that and interpret that as slightly unsettling, maybe even ominous. Um, the people look very, very small in the center of the image compared to the size and scale of this, again, presumably ancient looking forest, ancient looking landscape. So we've got human smallness. We've we've covered that sort of idea in some of our descriptions as well. And the idea that there's just sort of nature is out there existing, whether we like it or notice it or not. It's kind of indifferent to us. It's operating beyond human awareness. Okay, fine. So we can use structure in lots of different ways, and the sequencing of our description is really important. So we might potentially, we can use a flashback, or we might do something different. I'll give you some options. So this is one idea I had, and I was thinking about that idea of beauty and peace being fragile, and then nature just continuing on those natural processes of survival, life, death, necessity, survival. Those sorts of processes are kind of just whirring away, whether we notice them or not, whether we're involved in them as human beings or not. So I thought, well, let's start with that really serene calmness, that pale, apparently kind of undisturbed, snowy forest. Then a shift. There's a bit of movement. That image of a deer, I was thinking, right, we're going to get deer potentially in a forest like this. So deer standing motionless, the dark outline of the deer, breath misting in the cold against the mostly white backdrop in amongst the trees. Okay, that's an interesting idea. And then, okay, I want a bit of interest, something exciting, something that opens up some, I suppose, movement and descriptive possibility. So that burst of movement, wolves coming out, snow scattering, deer tries to get away, wolves attack, kill the deer. Okay? Ending, stillness again. The forest settles. The wolves have finished killing and eating the deer. It goes back to kind of peace and calm. The path is still there, and nature is just sort of watching on. Okay? The tone then for this is going to be really important because it's going to shape the experience. I'm not going to do a really like ludicrously gory description of wolves tearing apart a deer. I don't think that would work. It wouldn't fit with what I'm trying to go for. But I do want that sense of calm serenity at the start to give way briefly in my description to tension, anxiety, fear, particularly the deer's fear, um, and that emphasis on survival rather than the sort of like gory visual spectacle of a deer being pulled to pieces by wolves. That idea of like desperation and necessity for both the deer and the wolves. And then nature is indifferent. That there isn't really like a moral aspect to this. It's not about good or evil. It's not like, oh, the deer is good and the wolves are nasty and evil. It's just these are the sort of natural processes of survival that are necessary. It's not malicious. It's not evil. It's not malevolent. It's just necessity, surviving in this harsh, inhospitable environment. So, again, a reminder that when we look at these images of beauty, that beneath that is instinct, is survival, is struggle. You look at that peace and that tranquility and that serenity in the image. Beneath that, there's a great deal of like survival and desperation going on within the natural environment. So here's an idea. Okay, move my head out of the way. There he goes. So this was the survival plan that I made for the to build a fire video, or the video around survival and based around the story of to build a fire. So pause, use that again if you want. That's up to you. That's one option. This was the new idea. Okay, so we've got the still present, disturbance, deer, tremor in the stillness, the attack, and then a return to the kind of indifference, just sort of watching, unmoved, indifferent forest. Okay, that's effectively the four sequences or four paragraph section plan for the description that I've just laid out. The other option that you could go with is this, which would be to, because we've done quite a bit of descriptive writing that maybe touches on aspects of climate change in the way that we're impacting the natural world. Here's another idea that might be an interesting interpretation that for yes, okay, we've got an image of a snowy forest, but what about if we talked about how that forest is prematurely thawing? We have a flashback to some time in the past where at the same sort of point in the year the forest was still kind of deep within the grip of winter and frozen, and then over the course of the remaining two sections of our description, this growing realization that that nature has been altered by human action, and that this is really what climate change looks like. That might be a very interesting interpretation of the task, and again, a bit more conceptually ambitious than just, "Oh, isn't it cold in this forest? Look at the snow; it's pure and white." Okay, a bit boring. So those are some options for you to choose from, and obviously you can go back and you go back to video, pause them, use them. Just a reminder about the writing cycle. Okay, I'm just going to leave that again on the screen for you to remind yourself of that. We have this kind of internal paragraph descriptive structure that we use within our individual paragraphs to make sure that there's variety in our writing, our sentence structure, but also variety in terms of how we're engaging with the description rather than, as so often happens, just sort of listing things that can be seen. That's not very interesting. It's not very conceptualized. Doesn't do very well in the exam. So that's your task. That's your paper 1 section B task to complete. Obviously, you've got the paper 1 section A reading video focusing on the Lovely Bones extract. That's separate. Okay, so do that first, and then in 45 minutes, unless you've got extra time, we're into the writing cycle, we're into the description, and hopefully I've given you some more interesting ideas that will make this a real pleasure to produce. So best of luck, and I will see you hopefully well rested when we return after the half-term break.